Hello, Void. How are you all doing? Took a couple days off because I'm distractible and easily addicted to video game franchises. But Phoebe Rizzo is back at it once again and took a look today at Shin Godzilla. Now, this is only the second time I've seen this one, so it gave me a chance to reflect a little bit more on it than I had before because it's an interesting movie, but definitely not one for everyone. Now, if you count the American Godzilla films as well, this one is the 31st Godzilla film. So there's a lot of the big lizard kicking around. Now, Shin Godzilla is a complete reboot to the franchise. Now, almost every other Toho Godzilla film uses the original 1954 one as a springboard, and is a sequel to that, or at least ties in with that in some way. This one is the only one that doesn't. Now, the title is actually one of the few ones that actually kept the Japanese title in most markets. Shin Godzilla, with Shin translating a couple different ways, and that's intentional. It could be New Godzilla, could be True Godzilla, or God Godzilla. So, all of which are pretty applicable in this case. So, yeah, here we are. Now, this movie takes the franchise back to its 1950s roots, where it's essentially a horror disaster film rather than a campy monster brawl of the 60s or the darker but still overly sci-fi 80s, early 90s Godzillas. And then the 2000s just kind of did their own thing with each rebooting and their own weird take on things. So Godzilla has a lot of cannons. This one is kind of set off on its own. And I will say the Godzilla design in this is kind of terrifying. Now, when it first comes out, he actually has multiple forms of this one, and is slowly evolving as it goes along. The original CG monstrosity they have crawling about the city is weird looking. But I think it's supposed to be. But once he re-emerges, Godzilla is scary in this film. Between the eyes, just the way the arms look, and just he definitely does cut an intimidating figure. And when he does the radioactive breath, the way his mouth just distends and stretches, is kind of scary. Also, there's a few new tricks around this time, like they indicate that the fins on his back were pretty much meant to be like help him just work like nuclear vents. And, well, they definitely do it a big way, as he essentially can emit like a sort of a his laser from there, or his normal radioactive breath can essentially emanate from there, or from his tail, so he can breathe it out in a lot of different ways. Also, the prospect of him having distorted looking young coming at the end was, again, kind of twisted looking, and I was digging it. And there's a lot of cool shots in this movie, too. Like, at some point, you're getting a view from a computer screen. Like, you can see a lot of the data in front while people are coming in to look at it. There's a lot of strange angles like that, but it keeps it interesting. That said, this movie definitely isn't for everyone, as it is essentially board meeting the movie. Now, at the first time I saw this, it seemed to be kind of repetitive of a bunch of people in a room talking about what's going on. Then they move to a different room to talk about what's going on, and over and over and over. But on my second view, I kind of took it in a different light, and that it's almost like dark comedy of the Japanese government and how they would handle a situation like this. They're not sure what to do, so they just keep having meetings about what to do, and once you're really paying attention, they're almost winking at the camera with it a little bit, but they don't know who's talking to, or there's no precedent, so they don't want to make a decision. And pretty much at one point, they really decide, okay, we've come to a decision, now let's go to this other room to make a different decision. And I think they are knowing what they're doing with it. And in that light, it can be a bit more entertaining, but this movie is a bit dry in those sections, so you have to be kind of prepared for that. A lot of things are driven very monotone. Now, that said, there's definitely some tension going on for how things are going. So I do kind of like how it turned ended up going overall. Now, it's since Godzilla is mostly known for fighting other monsters, and there's only been 2 outings before in the Japanese franchises where it is just him. And then Godzilla 1984 or 1985, depending on your country, and the original Godzilla. So it's kind of hard not to just do a complete rehash. And this one, I think, does add some other stakes of them trying to have to solve this problem of a monster wrecking their city before someone else comes in and does it with even more casualties or loss of the whole region. So there's a lot going on here, and I think a lot of it was working overall. Now, this film came out in 2016, so just a little bit after the Legendary Pictures American version of Godzilla. This film wasn't really meant to compete with that one. This one was already in the works at the time, since well before that one started, so they weren't really meant to compete. And this film did very well in Japan, and it's pretty much one of the best received Godzilla films out there for a time, and I can understand that. Now, Godzilla isn't in, like most Godzilla films, it's not focused on directly, it's mostly the people trying to deal with him, or the situation around him, so you have to be prepared for that. It's not a lot of monster action. Now, they also switched up the origin of Godzilla, which kind of worked in a degree for when you take it back to the original allegories. Now, the original 1954 Godzilla was meant to be an allegory for the atomic bomb. Now, this time, with him being a product of some nuclear waste that was in the ocean, and it seems to be more an embodiment of the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And the time frame kind of matches up for that as well, if you're paying attention to some of the dates. So it's a different kind of take on it. So, which could explain how they portray a few of the things differently. And this film was a long time coming, since the Godzilla film before this that Toho produced was Godzilla Final Wars, which was 12 years before this one. So it took a while for them to come back, but as much as I love Final Wars, and I do, it is campy fan service and kind of amazing in its own regard. This one has got to be the most serious Godzilla film since the original, and I think it works well in that regard. That said, it is bone dry for a lot of it. Part of that, I think, has to do with the lack of music throughout the film. There's very little music. It's a lot of quiet. With the exception of when Godzilla's rampaging in doing his thing, or when they finally come up with a response and start moving. So when they finally get a plan and start taking action, then the music will chip in. But whenever their characters have no idea what to do or are lost, the music is just gone. And I do say I do like a lot of the old classic Godzilla tunes coming back, and they also used the familiar, I believe it was the 60s style roar for him, so there's a lot of nostalgia here also. So, Shin Godzilla, it's not really for everyone, but I'm going to give this one, it's not my favorite Godzilla by any means. That said, I think it works, but it's not one I'm going to watch very often because it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's an acquired taste, but it's a particular taste. So it's not something I could eat a lot of. Every once in a while, sure. So I'm only going to give this one a 6 MacGuffins. It's good, don't get me wrong, but there are some things that do make it a bit on the slower end for it. So it's definitely above average overall for films for me, but I'm only going to be able to give it a 6 one because there is a lot of waiting around for things to happen. That said, when they are happening and Godzilla is doing his light show, it is really cool. Alright, so it's going to be all for this one, and should be back in a couple days. Might dust something else off, or maybe pull something up on Shudder. Still got a stack of shark movies I'm going through too, so I don't know, we'll see. Catch you later.